Hello everybody, welcome back to your deadline stream, and it is deadline day today. We're only a few hours away from that early Friday deadline, which sees Arsenal play Southampton. As always though, we're going to be talking through all the injury news for the weekend, and we'll be guiding you through with the Premier Injuries website and also the predicted lineups that Ben has created for everybody. But of course, all the information does come from the man himself. So how are you doing today, Ben?
All good, Jay. Yeah, it's not your usual or your typical Friday afternoon, which is always usually pretty manic. Obviously, the FA Cup semi-finals, and we had 9 press conferences on Thursday, which obviously eased up a lot of pressure. Although we had one press conference this morning, anyhow, they still managed to shoehorn in the remaining 6 press conferences between 1:30 and 2 o'clock. So there will still be updates or tweaks. But with regards to team news, we haven't had anything major, major updates in there. So yeah, fairly confident that, the predicted lineups shouldn't be too far off the mark.
So we'll get into them in a second, but just to remind everybody that, as always, we'll be going through the teams alphabetically. I'll put this in the comments as well. But also, if you don't have your questions initially answered, you can always head to the Premier Injuries website, which I've got up here. You can click down on any team and it has the latest information. And then if that doesn't answer your question as well, you can always head to Twitter or the comments below, and Ben and I will do our most to answer everybody's questions. But let's move it into the predicted team lineups. And first,
Jay, I'll sorry to interject just before we kick things off.
Yeah.
I want to say I am expecting a parcel between 2:20 and 3:20. Now it's a brand new pair of trainers, so I ain't missing that for anybody. So if I leave, my apologies. You can fill for 30, 60 seconds or so when I nip to the front door and get that delivery. I'll do a live reveal as well if anybody wants to see what I've been spending me hard-earned pennies on.
I like that, an unboxing. We're becoming that kind of YouTube channel now as well. Yeah. But I'm actually shocked that, nothing usually comes in between the live streams, but a pair of shoes will. But I respect it as well. These better be very class shoes indeed. And people can comment below if they like them as well, if they come during the live stream. But yes, we're going to move to Bournemouth. What is the latest from the Cherries?
Yeah, not too much change in the Cherries treatment room. Matthias Wiener is the one injury doubt. He has taken part in aspects of training, took a knock to the lower back at Tottenham. Of course, he came in for a rare start last weekend and actually scored, helped the Cherries with that 3-2 win, but was replaced early in that second half. At the time of Gary O'Neill's press conference on Thursday, again, we're playing the percentages here, and I've just went on the fact that, because he hadn't trained fully, I haven't got him in that starting lineup. So I've brought Adam Smith back into the team. The only other consideration that Gary O'Neill may look to make is Marco Senesi. The Argentine had picked up a little bit of a hamstring problem, returned to the bench last week, but Chris Meppen managed to hold down that spot, and deservedly so. Like I say, the Cherries left the Tottenham Stadium with a 3-2 victory. So I'm not veering too much away from that starting 11.
Yeah, they're looking impressive at the moment, the Cherries. Gary O'Neill has done a really good job, and I think they can be proud. I have a soft spot for them. I hope that they do stay up. Next, obviously, is my team. More than a soft spot for them. They're my first love, Arsenal. They have to turn things round this weekend. We've got a couple of comments already. I'll reveal more as more come in. Some people are making guesses as to what shoes you have brought, Ben. But yeah, let's focus on the Gunners first, and then we'll get to those lovely shoe predictions here. Obviously, we got the first 11 predictions at the moment. A lot of talk about Bukayo Saka. I'm not sure if he'll keep his place in the team, but you do have him in there. And let's talk through all the other injury news as well for the team.
Yeah, Saka was, I just think, he's a big time player, and I think Mikel Arteta will want to put him straight back out there. And what better opportunity, to get boost his confidence after that penalty. And it could be a season-defining penalty miss. The way it's sort of panning out from 3-1 to then, leaving West Ham with a 2-2 draw, their second consecutive week where they've blown a 2-goal lead. Who knows what kind of impact that will have come the final day. So, Mikel Arteta did single out Bukayo Saka. He said he's been great in training. He's a lad that's still full of confidence. He is still on spot kick duties. And he likes that responsibility. He loves the pressure. So I do have Saka starting. The other sort of major or two other talking points, Rob Holding, he retains his place at the back, and there's still concerns over the fitness of William Saliba. Mikel Arteta was coy, or he certainly couldn't confirm or deny whether the French centre-back would play again this season. What we do know is maybe he's not progressing as quickly as hoped. And this is one which will be probably drag out, evaluated on a daily basis, hopefully to a point where they can increase his intensity levels. There's no reaction and bring him back, but at the minute there are big question marks. And then also there was a little bit of contradictory comments from Mikel Arteta with regards to Zinchenko. He spoke about the left back who missed out last weekend with a groin related problem, and he said he started off the conversation by saying that he was uncertain whether the fullback would make it. Now, images released by the club's website on Wednesday actually had Zinchenko in training, and that gave owners obviously a lot of hope and optimism. But when questioned again and further down the line, he said that it's a muscle injury. He still isn't there yet. And he sort of seemed to suggest or hint that maybe the fullback wasn't ready. And that could have been a combination of, like I say, a little bit of the injury, a little bit of precaution, and then also with one eye maybe on that Manchester City game next weekend with a view to potentially starting Kieran Tierney against Southampton, which really should be a shoe-in for the Gunners, and protecting Zinchenko, give him a little bit more time for really that top-of-the-table clash.
Do you think as well, Zinchenko's had a few muscular problems through the season? Is it a bit of a worry that this could be a re-injury and therefore maybe a bit more serious than usual?
Yeah, most of the previous issues have been calf related. So like I say, this is more, I understand, more to be an adductor issue, and it was more of a precautionary measure. So you see, he has been taking part in certainly in aspects of training. So he shouldn't be too far away, barring any kind of further setback.
So at the moment, will you confirm if somebody guesses it correct, Ben? We've got Cedric saying, are they a fresh pair of Skechers?
No.
Marius has said anything from Adidas.
No.
We've got somebody said a nice pair. Chill Gamers said, I think Ben bought a lovely pair of Crocs.
Absolutely 100 million% no. Never, ever in my life.
Michael Parks says Nike Air Jordan 4s or 1s like Dave.
Well, you got the Nike, right? I'll give you the Nike.
Is it a
Look,
Nike?
I will contextualize it, right? So they're for training. So they're not a trainer for leisure activities and being out and about. These are primarily for exercising and more often that I'll be running.
Chill Gamers loving that you said absolutely not to the Crocs. I mean, they're so comfortable, aren't they?
No.
I wouldn't be caught dead in a pair either, don't worry, Ben. I was just going to say, with the Nikes, have you bought a tick because you won't buy a tick from Twitter? You stand up to Elon.
Yeah, I'm tickless, and that was me. My next question: what if the Pope, Cristiano Ronaldo, even Liverpool, and Ben Dinnery got in common? Yeah. We all lost our ticks on Thursday.
Yeah.
I had to check it. Yeah. What can I say? I shed a tear on my pillow last night, but onwards and upwards, Jason.
Onwards and upwards, and hopefully onwards and upwards for everybody listening with their FPL teams. And yeah, hopefully we do see these shoes live on air. If not, you'll have to do like a Twitter / live stream reveal, because I think people are really invested in this now. Jondre says, hi, Ben and Jason. He's put some beer emojis as well, which is fantastic. And I think we've covered all the Arsenal news, but Chem has said Utara will start surely for Bournemouth. What do you think on that one, Ben?
Like I say, just given results, particularly last weekend, I don't see Gary O'Neill changing too much, in all honesty. Cherries have been great. They're almost safe now. So, yeah, other than that potentially enforced change with Matthias Wiener facing a late fitness test. And there was a little bit of talk about why Adam Smith had been dropped. I think he's accumulated 9 yellow cards, and it isn't quite past that cutoff yet. So, that's the other consideration and the Senesi. But other than that, like I say, there's I think you've got to keep faith, on the majority of that team that got that result.
I think so too. Don't change something that's what was it again? Don't fix something when it ain't broke. And it seems to be working at the moment. Definitely working for Aston Villa at the moment. They're flying high. They're playing so well. They could creep into those Champions League places. And I'd love it if they replaced Man United up there. That would be class. So the Magpies and Villa.
Controversial, Jason.
Jondre has said, can you call the score for Aston Villa versus Brentford? He reckons they'll keep a clean sheet. I'll go through some of the kind of data analysis that you and I did this week, Ben. But starting first and foremost with the injury news, is it positive or negative for the Villains?
Neither really. There's no fresh injury concerns, first and foremost. Now, we were expecting the likes of Matty Cash, Philip Coutinho, maybe Kamara, they're all to be sort of close following their recent injury problems. But Unai Emery basically said that, nobody's going to be considered for the match day squad this weekend. I would suggest that maybe Leon Bailey's probably a little bit further behind those. Of course, that's a hamstring problem. And for that reason alone, again, and the performance against Newcastle, they've done a bit of a job on us from the first minute. We weren't at the races. I expect the Villains to be unchanged. And
with the Villains' underlying data, so this is something I think you mentioned in the 888 article as well this week. It's just quite interesting. I'd say they're probably doing all right with their attacking data, but they're massively running hot on that defensive numbers. And John McKenzie from Tifo Football as well, he did something similar this week. He did a video as well. I don't know if he's copying our notes. Tifo seemed to copy us sometimes. Hi to John McKenzie if he's watching. But it is a problem. They are allowing a lot of chances. They're fourth highest XG conceded, I think, since the World Cup. I can't remember the data that was put out there. They're doing very well with those clean sheets, and Martinez is a fantastic goalkeeper. But I think, at the end of the day, they could be caught out, especially with a high-quality finisher like Ivan Toney.
Yeah, I just think Brentford are running a little bit hot and cold at the moment. I am right in thinking it's back-to-back defeats. Firstly at home to Newcastle, and then was it Wolves last weekend. So maybe their dip in form has just come at the wrong time in terms of, that push for a European slot. They seem to be, just slipping away from that at the moment. Look, there's been a few changes internally, with that starting 11. Particularly in midfield, and then we also seen Brian Mbeumo drop out of that starting 11 in recent matches as well. We typically seen him paired alongside Ivan Toney and sometimes with Johan Wissa, but Kevin Schneid, I think it is, hopefully haven't another name I've butchered up there. So where is that Brentford team seem to be locked in for quite a long time? Like I say, there's a few more sort of names in the mix now, and I don't know if it's just, like I say, starting to affect the teams. Maybe they're coming a little bit jaded, maybe not as fresh as they were. And we still don't know what's happening with Ivan Toney, by the way. This FA charge that seems to be hanging over from a lifetime, going back to, December. We're still no further forward in understanding how or when that potential suspension will be implemented.
So just kind of continuing, we've got Jandre. He's asking, Ben, do you think Digne will ever get a chance again, or can we bank on Moreno being nailed?
When we're playing, I think game week to game week, one game every sort of 5, 6, 7 days, it looks like Moreno's certainly locked in with that. With a double game week and the quick turnarounds, I think that's maybe when Unai Emery will look to utilise the strength and depth of his squad, and we could potentially see Lucas Digne have some kind of involvement over the next few games. Now, how he wants to make those changes and implement that rotational policy will come up to the manager. Potentially, he may look to target specific fixtures, or he may look to start Mourinho and bring him off fairly early. It remains to be seen, but I do expect minutes from Luca Digne over the next 7 to 8 days.
Now, my comments on Manchester United seem to have upset a couple of people there. My apologies to Cedric and Rune A. Cedric has said, whoa, Jason, why are United catching strays? Surely Villa ahead of Spurs would be better. I mean, I don't think Spurs have got a chance at the moment. I'm in controversial mood this week. I don't know why. But yeah, I think Spurs, they're not really in it. And I would just like to see Man United lower than Villa, because I think it'd be nice to see Villa back in a European kind of position. It would just be fun to have a bit of difference there. And obviously there's the Arsenal and Manchester United inter-rivalry as well. And Rune said, so you prefer Villa in front of United, Jason? Well, I guess many prefer City in front of Arsenal too. I'm sure there's many. I'm
Stinging.
not. I'm not too worried about it. It's just a bit of football banter. I mean, Ben, do you wanna jump in and say, catch some of these punches as well?
Look, I've got an axe to grind with both teams, me. So, I'd quite happy if either one of them didn't finish in the top half. We're still smarting from that Carabao Cup defeat to United, and then Villa goes all the way back to sub on the Tyne when we lost. I think it was at Villa Park, and we actually went down to the second tier of the Championship. So, yeah, there's always been a little bit of needle then, a little bit of niggle, and like you say, a good banter between the teams. And do you know what? I'm not really bothered about either. They're pretty much non-entities as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think in years to come, it will be, Arsenal, Man City, Newcastle, maybe one of another team up there, but it's going to be dominated by those teams. The others will fall away. They're the little boys of the.
Oh, it's very clickbait, this, J-Mac.
Mary says, will be goals galore in Villa Brentford. That's what I'm calling with this one. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. And Jandre says Arsenal will beat Southampton comfortably and revert back to 1-0 to the Arsenal versus City. I hope you're right there, Jandre. Now, we've obviously talked about Villa's opponent, Brentford, a little bit there. But yeah, what is the latest news there? And as you've alluded to there, still no updates on Ivan Toney.
Yeah, Pontus Jansson was a player who actually went off injured against Newcastle in those opening exchanges. That hamstring problem, unfortunately, is going to rule him out for the remainder of the season. So again, it comes down to how Thomas Frank wants to set up his team. Inherently early on in the campaign, it was that 3-5-2, 5-3-2 out of possession. In more recent times, it's been that 4-3-3. But like I say, those are different results. I'm going to go back to that old tried and trusted method. And for that reason, that solid sort of back three line, Matthias Zanka-Jorgensen in alongside Ethan Pinnock.
Interesting indeed. We're going to move to, Brighton and Chelsea do not play this game week at all. So Crystal Palace up next. And indeed, I think a couple of people say that they want to see your free hit team for this game week. So I might get your 888 article up on screen to go through that at the end of today's broadcast. But yeah, Eze is somebody that I'm liking the look of from the Crystal Palace team. But what is the injury information for the team?
Yeah, absolutely. Eze, look, he's pretty hot at the moment. Nobody in and nobody out of that Palace treatment room. Potentially, we could have Nathaniel Klein and Wilfried Zaha back in contention from next week. Not game week 33, but maybe the next weekend. Otherwise, I'm maybe counting on the Eagles naming an unchanged team for the third match running. Of course, they're being rejuvenated under Roy Hodgson. 2 fantastic results, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got a third this weekend.
Yeah, Roy has worked miracles there, and they seem to be, with an eye for goal as well, which is kind of quite unique for the Roy Hodgson era. Long may it continue, because they're offering quite a few cheap differential options. Giandro's asked a question. He's asked it to me, but I guess to both of us. Do you reckon we back Toney and Watkins this weekend? I think so. I think they'll both be involved in a high scoring game. What about you, Ben?
I certainly love the look of Watkins. His form, particularly since the beginning of the year, has been outstanding. Head and shoulders really above, I think, everybody in terms of a number of the key metrics. First and foremost, FPL point return. So I think he deserves credit. His performance last week against Newcastle was outstanding in front of Gareth Southgate. I think he had a point to prove. Ivan Toney, like I say, I'm not so sure. I just think Brentford have went off the boil a little bit. So that's my worry with them. And I do expect Villa to come home with to get all 3 points this weekend.
The thing is obviously Villa are away, Brentford are at home, and they do play a little bit better at home as well. So this is why I do agree with you. I think Brentford have fallen off here, but the home crowd, I think that will give them a boost, and so I can see the goals. Also, both Brentford and Villa have kind of lowish chances of keeping clean sheets. So Brentford have a 31% chance and Aston Villa have a 29% chance. And then if you look at the kind of predicted points as well for this game week, Ivan Toney's got the second highest for forwards and Watkins has the 5th highest. The only one that, I guess there's a couple in there that might compete with them. We've obviously got Gabriel Jesus that might compete for a place in your squad. But also, I like the look of Alexander Isak. He's had some very promising underlying data in kind of recent weeks. Obviously, the game against Villa aside, Newcastle seem to have recaptured that pressing game, that ability to create good chances. And he's looking quite good as well. What do you think about maybe throwing him in there with the discussion of Giandro kind of saying Toney and Watkins? Surely Isaac's got to be in there as well.
Yeah, I think Eddie Howe, and we will touch upon this, he's got some big decisions to make this weekend, particularly on the back of that performance down at Villa Park. Eddie Howe did mention it this morning, but I've been having this conversation all week. The absence of Sean Longstaff away from home in game week 31, can it be overstated? Because he is the legs, he is the person that does all of the nasty, that horrible hard work that allows those front players to do what they're good at. So I do see Longstaff coming back in, and then higher up the pitch, there's question marks all over that front line. We've got Miggy Almiron coming back from that hamstring problem, potentially for Murphy. We know San Maxim's out. Does Wilson get a chance alongside Isak? I just don't know. Look, I do like Isak, and I do think he'll start. And I think Eddie Howe may resist the urge to go with the two, the Callum Wilson and Isak. If he did, Isak would be pushed out a little bit wide. And then, so in terms of that attacking threat, I don't know if he may lose a little bit. So that would be my only concerns. But yeah, it's a difficult one to call, because does he stick with those players who, for the most part, have got us in that position, or does he look to freshen things up a little bit, because Newcastle are beginning to look just a little bit jaded?
Yeah. Everton up next for the injury news. What is the latest for the Toffees, Ben?
Yeah, we've seen Sean Dyche slightly tweak his formation in recent weeks. Went from that 4-5-1 to a 4-4-2. Done that at Old Trafford, Manchester United. Then quickly made the change by bringing Godfrey off. Went with a 4-4-2 again last week, and again changed midway through the first half. So that's why, I've went back with that 4-5-1. But a lot of this will be dependent on whether Amadou Onana is past fit. Missed out last weekend with a groin problem. He did train on Thursday, and that's when we heard from Sean Dyche. Now, he said with regards to his starting lineup, he'll not make that decision until today, and he wants to make sure that Onana in particular hasn't suffered any kind of reaction. But I have included him just because I think he's an important player, particularly in the absence of Decore, who serves the last game of his ban. We do know, we can fairly safely assume that Dominic Calvert-Lewin will return to the Everton squad. I expect minutes from the bench, and his last 2 goal-scoring returns for Everton have both been against Crystal Palace.
Interesting indeed. Let's continue the analysis. We've got a few messages here. Cedric has said he's going with Isaac, Toney and Watkins in the team. I'm tempted to, but I don't have a free hit this week, so I don't really want to take too many hits on my team. Jandre says I'm going Watkins, Jesus and Isaac, but I like Jota. We have to pronounce it correctly. We've been bombarded so many times when we said it incorrectly. Fulham up next. Somebody that I really, really like is Pereira. Also Wilson as well. I think they could do quite well against a really, really bad Leeds defence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big talking point here is who's actually going to lead the attack for the Cottagers. Mitrovic is 4 games into that 8-match ban. He's not due back until when, Jason?
Oh God, I don't know.
Jason, when is Mitrovic due back?
Oh,
have a think, Jason.
Your birthday?
It's my birthday, May the 13th, Jason.
Yes,
well done.
May the 13th.
Yeah.
I was thinking how many games, because we go through this each week where you go, I asked you last week, so I guess you're paying me back, aren't you? I dropped my pen as you asked the question.
So we've seen Dan James lead the attack last weekend. Unfortunately, he's ineligible under the terms of his loan agreement. Now, I have put Vinicius back in there, but if Marco Silva doesn't fancy him, then Decoba Reed could lead the attack. He's quite a versatile player. You have seen him on the right. We've also seen him at right back this season. But Harry Wilson scored on his return to the side, so I think he keeps his place. And like I say, maybe it's that striking role, that attacking role is probably between Vinicius and Decoba Reed. Everybody else in that team more or less picks itself.
So that is good there. And just to remind people again, when's your birthday?
It's May the 30th, Jason.
Ah, lovely. So people can send in messages, send you cards. I don't know.
Send me some love.
Yeah, send some love for May the 13th. Leeds up next, Fulham's opponent. Is there any injury news with them to kind of maybe help Fulham out?
Oh, I think they might need a miracle. Max Vuba returned to the matchday squad against Liverpool. That was off the back of just a single 1 or 2 training sessions. So, of course, wasn't ready to start. But Javier Gracia confirms he's in a much better place in terms of his readiness. I would expect him to be thrown straight back in there, having conceded 11 goals in 2 games at Ellen Road. The other big talking point is a little bit higher up the pitch, and that's whether Patrick Bamford can recover from that calf strain. There's no guarantees with that, so that's why I've plumbed for Rodrigo in this instance. Elsewhere, he did mention Willie Gnonto was a player who picked up an ankle injury while on international duty for Italy. He said that he had been managing him, held him back a little bit, but now he's already 100%. So that's why I brought him in at the expense of Aronson.
Now, I briefly moved on to Leicester there just for a second as you were talking about Rodrigo and Gnonto. My question to you, Ben, is who is the worst team in the Premier League at the moment? Is it Leicester or is it Leeds?
Oh, do you know what? I've seen signs of, look, Leicester were atrocious. Or what were they atrocious? Look, they could have been absolutely blown away last weekend by Manchester City. And they showed a little bit of fight and a little bit of spirit in that second half. And whether that's, because of what the new manager bounce and Dean Smith coming in and maybe that offered them a little bit of hope, and they got a bit of a goal back. City took their foot off the gas, probably took the eye off the ball, literally, for a little bit of mistake by Edison. But I've seen enough there to suggest that maybe they haven't thrown in the towel. Leeds, like I say, they're not changing managers. What they've got in terms of personnel is basically the squad they're putting out week in and week out. I'm not a big fan of Gracia. I don't understand why the likes of Liam Cooper has fell so far down the pecking order, particularly in the absence of Max Ruber. You need somebody who's experienced, who's been in that relegation dogfight before. He bleeds Leeds United, and yet he still can't get those minutes. That's the worry for me. So you know what? Even though if you look at the form table, it's Leeds Leicester all the way. I'm saying Leeds are the side that I would be more worried about in terms of their status in the top flight.
Now, Marius says he believes both are the worst teams, whereas Giandre agrees with you, Ben. He says, I think Leicester have to do something rather sooner than later. I reckon they will take the 3 points versus Wolves, but just. So quite interesting there, the comments from people. And yeah, so let's move to the Leicester City kind of injury analysis at the moment. I think one of the most interesting things for me, Ben, since the kind of sacking of Brendan Rodgers has been Soyuncu straight back in the team. And Wilfred Ndidi, I think, was flirting with coming in the team in the last few games as well with Brendan Rodgers. It kind of maybe speaks that there was maybe a few more problems at the club than just, playing badly personnel. Because I remember maybe this time last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, Soyuncu was being touted for Real Madrid, Manchester United. Could it be that the personnel at Leicester are actually better and maybe Rodgers was holding them back, and maybe psychologically there was problems at the club?
Yeah, well, we know that those well-documented issues between Rodgers and Yannick Vestergaard. He was actually banished to train with the under-21s, for those final few weeks of his tenure. And that was for an unsolicited report in a Danish outlet where Vestergaard basically criticised Brendan Rodgers. He was a player that he chased down, signed for around £15 million from Southampton. He brought him in. He knew exactly what you're going to get with Vestergaard, and yet, he's never really had a chance. And even when they were struggling for centre-backs at the club, he chose to drop in the likes of Amati and have players out of position. We've now, Vestergaard did return for the under-21s on Monday, but unfortunately suffered a setback. That's a calf injury that will keep him out. And with regards to Soyuncu, Brendan Rodgers always referred to these ongoing hamstring issues and how Soyuncu maybe wasn't training to the best of his abilities. But then Soyuncu would sort of come out and he would play for Turkey and and so on and so forth. And there was always something that you suspected was going on behind the scenes. Dean Smith comes in, reinstates him, and you know what? Given the circumstances and given the opposition, he's one of the players that could leave the Etihad with his head held high with a half decent performance.
Yeah, I think he's looked good as well. I've always rated Wilfred Ndidi too, so it'll be interesting to see maybe how the team. Jandre said, sorry, I'm busy with the questions, but I'm on a free hit. That's absolutely fine. That's why we're here for everybody. We do have questions on James Maddison. Some people are saying, is he a must-own this week? Marius says, I want a worldie by Maddison. That's what we need. In terms of it, looking at the data, since game week 20, 11 games, 12 games, Maddison has averaged 3.64 points per 90 in FPL. I don't know if Dean Smith is going to oversee some massive, huge improvement in his hauls, but I think Leicester are one of those perennial teams where people kind of expect them to improve and haven't. And maybe Maddison's part of that problem as well, as we expect him to do well. And he's had flashpoints this season. He's doing well, but I I don't know, there's no consistency there. There's no kind of data to back it up. And Wolves, they're pretty bad as well. But Jose Sar's a pretty good goalkeeper, so he might frustrate FPL owners. What do you think on that one? What do you think on Maddison?
Yeah, I think Maddison, look, a great player, undoubtedly. Could end up at Newcastle, in the summer, if rumours are to be believed. Sometimes flatters to deceive. Is he a must-own for this game week? Look, I think any inclusion is going to be a bit of a gamble. We're speculating that, Leicester are going to come good against a Wolves team who, again, they've been on the back of a couple of good results. Lopetegui sets his side up. They're hard to break down. Two solid banks of four predominantly. Even, a 4 and a 5 in there on occasion. So it's a game, I think there'll be a few nervous people, a few nervous players on that pitch. I don't expect there to be many goals. But undoubtedly Maddison's got that class to be able to unlock the door, to create that moment of brilliance. Is he a must-own? I wouldn't, if you're on a free hit, maybe take a gamble, but would I be looking to bring him in any other way? Probably not. I think there are better options still, despite this truncated schedule this week.
Yeah. Mr. Blanky has said, should I sell Haaland for Salah? I think everybody's got Salah this game week, isn't it? It's kind of a FOMO if you don't have him. But yeah, John Dre's answered the question for me. If you get Haaland back quickly, then yes. I don't think you can go without Haaland for very long. But yeah, Liverpool at the moment, positive. Loads of players are back from injury, and they seem to be improving. But for FPL managers, must be a bit of a headache, because who do they bring into their team? Again, from your 888 article, you've kind of gone with a couple of defenders, because you said you weren't sure who would start in the front lineup. Is this going to be a problem for this game week and maybe going forward? Apart from Salah, you're not sure if Darwin or Gakpo or Jota is going to start each week.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if we're talking game week to game week, where players are getting optimum time to recover, then I can see that front line maybe being fairly settled in terms of personnel, which is why I've basically stuck with this front three. Jurgen Klopp was asked about it in his press conference, and he talked about picking that front line based on the opposition and pressing those players, and having that really high press of the forwards. He also referenced the fact that obviously Darwin Núñez isn't particularly happy about not being involved, and he likes that. Why would you be happy being named on the bench? I expect probably this three, but again, maybe change it up for those midweek fixtures, and then potentially a little bit rotation ahead of game week 34 as well. Like you say, Mo Salah is probably the only player that you look at who looks absolutely nailed down for a start, particularly in his recent upturn in form. I think he makes top 5 in outputs post World Cup since game week 17. So he has been bubbling under the surface, going about his business. Maybe I have been judging Salah on, the majestic man that he has been over previous seasons. He's still a lot of money, but he is still delivering 180 FPL points. I think that's joint with Gabriel Martinelli.
Now, we've got a question from John Dre. He says, Ben, do you bet your house on Gakpo and Jota starting? I don't think you want to be homeless, Ben, so I'm guessing probably not. But yeah, go on. What's your thoughts?
I mean, the house is a bit of I wouldn't necessarily go in all in din on the house, but I'm fairly confident. I don't sound fairly confident, do I? Look, I'm saying a solid 80% that I think this front three will start together.
What important item would you be willing to bet?
Well, let's see if my new trainers get you, and I might stick my old trainers on. It's part of the bet.
I was going to say, would you stick the new trainers as part of the bet?
Yeah, I nearly thought about that, and I thought no.
I mean, we're getting into weird territory here, like OnlyFans content where people are kind of competing to win your used items of clothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a selling point. It could be a USP for the channel.
Well, when times are hard, Jason.
Well, people, let us know in the comments. Would you want one of Ben's old...
Some Dinnery's duds.
Yeah. But
move on.
yeah, we haven't got Manchester City playing this game week, but we do have a question about Nathan Ake. What is his injury? Is it serious, Ben? What is the latest on that?
Hamstring injury. Further evaluations on Friday to understand the full extent of the problem. Now, I believe it isn't too serious, but in terms of hamstring injuries and how they're managed and even minor issues, we still could be talking at least 2 to 3 weeks. So, any return or considering a return this month would be a huge, huge bonus. But I suspect we're looking at May. We should hopefully have an update probably in and around that FA Cup tie this weekend. Like I say, once those, I think he's going for an ultrasound or maybe an MRI scan to help determine, like I say, the extent of that problem. So no definitive answer at the moment, but like suffice to say, we're talking, a good few games out just because of the fixture congestion.
And with that situation, who's going to come into the side? Who's going to play at that role?
Difficult. It depends if Pep wants to stick with this sort of 3-2-4-1 formation that he has been playing in recent game weeks. I think that goes back to RB Leipzig, or if he wants to maybe go back to a flat back four. There is Laporte is certainly an option left on the left hand side. Kyle Walker could come in on the right hand side, and shuffle everybody across with that. So, like I say, he does have options. It may just depend on the opposition. It may also depend on just that managing of other players in particular loads as well. Because, like I say, by his own admission, players are beginning to feel, the weight of competing in all of these competitions and these high pressure environments. And we may see a little bit more rotation from Pep in the upcoming game weeks. But like I say, every game is such a big one, and they've done really, really well to close this gap down on Arsenal. The last thing they want to be doing is tinkering too much and risking all of that, great work by, dropping points.
Marius has said Diaz is the safest. Do you agree with him?
I mean, he's a player again. I'm maybe looking outside of recent games in terms of ability and where he should be. Yes, look, I think Ruben Diaz is an excellent player, but he hasn't been without his problems this season. Namely, I think we're talking 2 major hamstring setbacks, and one of them wasn't too long ago. I think that carried over from the World Cup, put him out for around about 6 weeks. So that's definitely, that's going to be in the thinking when considering around maybe these 3 game weeks. So look, if it was just black and white and we were just picking players because they were the best players in the squad, then yes, Diaz. But those hamstring concerns would be enough of just a nagging doubt in your mind to categorically state that he will be nailed.
Right, let's turn our attention to the tune. We've got Isaac up front, but we've got a lot of questions. People are saying, I don't like Isaac and Wilson rotation. They're worried. How confident are you that Isaac starts? Let's talk through the Newcastle team and obviously that Wilson versus Isaac conundrum.
Yeah, I can't see him dropping Isaac, first and foremost. So for me, if Wilson does come in, then it's going to be at the expense of somebody else. How could I see this playing out? I don't see him dropping Joe Linton either. So maybe it would be Joe Linton dropping a little bit deeper. Joe Willock coming out of that starting 11. Isaac going out wide with Wilson playing in that central role. He could tweak the formation and play. We could go with a 4-4-2 or a 4-4-1-1. I don't know. The reality is that, they will be unleashed together at some point. I'm just not sure whether it's going to be this weekend. And of the two, I think Isak has that better form and he's just looking that little bit sharper, although Callum Wilson has certainly played himself into strong contention. The other discussion points on the right-hand side, does Miggy Almiron come in for Murphy? I believe he does. He had his cameo last weekend. I think he's probably going to come in for maybe 60 or 70 minutes. Elsewhere within the team, I've certainly got Longstaff in. I see again, I don't think we have anybody quite with that, what he brings to that team, his profile, that work ethic. He's the legs, he's the motor. Nobody runs further, nobody runs harder than him in the team, so he's hard to replace. Bruno Guimaraes, he's playing with that ongoing ankle issue. Understand that he could potentially have surgery at the end of the season, although there's, that's just some suggestion. There's nothing confirmed with that, but I don't see Bruno dropping out. In the other position that I'm currently thinking, does Eddie Howe freshen? That might be the left back spot. I love Dan Burn. I think he's been one of our best signings of recent times. Had a great start of the season, but maybe the last 5 or 6 games, maybe he's getting just a little bit found out. And now that Matty Targett's fully fit and ready, I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing Matty Targett back in that starting 11 at some point in the very near future.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if he does come in, just give like a bit of a different style there to Dan Burn. But I agree with you, he's been great this season. And I think as well, what I love about the whole of the Newcastle back line, I think they're one of those defences that you just hate to play against. They're good at the dark arts, they're good at that, but also they're just so well drilled. Like Eddie Howe, I think previously people were kind of saying, oh, is he a good defensive coach? Is he this, is he that? Maybe he learnt from his time. He went and studied the Atletico Madrid team, so he's probably picked up a few pointers there, but it certainly worked. Best defence in the league this season. We've got a question here from Nebjosha. Not sure if I've killed that or not, but he said, could we get an update on Brighton, particularly Steele and Veltman? Now, obviously, we've skipped over that because they're not playing this game week. But yeah, of course, Ben, what is the latest from the Seagulls?
Not much to go on, really, in terms of an update from Roberto De Zerbi. He said players are still being evaluated and we will make a late decision on Saturday morning. But what I do understand in the build-up to this game, Jason Steele was just a minor issue last weekend that kept him out. However, would we have seen Sanchez in the starting 11 anyway for the FA Cup? So Steele may be utilised in the Premier League. So we fully expect Steele to be in and around the matchday squad, although it could be, like I say, Sanchez starting in the Cup. Evan Ferguson is a big concern. That's ankle related. The initial sort of prognosis was around about a few weeks, and Joel Veltman, that was hamstring related as well. Again, I'd be very, very surprised if he was to make any of these games over the next sort of 7 to 8 days.
Now, I'm still disappointed we've not seen these new shoes yet.
I'm starting to it's 3 minutes past 3.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to get a little bit anxious because I need these, Jason. I need them in my life today.
I'm anxious because I really want them to come on screen today. Like it would be, one of the crowning moments. We've got some funny moments lined up for the end of the season as well, but this would be like peak just Dinnery Jason moments. Nottingham Forest, I'm still back in the team. You've put me in there. But what is the latest from Forest as well with this very tough fixture against Liverpool?
Yeah, I mean, great news from Forest this week is the fact that, there's been no fresh injury concerns. So, we haven't had an opportunity to say that much, that before on behalf of Steve Cooper. So well done, Forest, with regards to that. However, there has been a setback in terms of Dean Henderson. It was hoped that he would rejoin the group this week in training. That hasn't happened. He's working individually, and there's question marks whether he will return this season. So that locks in Navas. Elsewhere, Jack Colback, he could potentially return. He's been out due to the concussion protocols, and also not listed as an injury as such, but Jess Lingard ongoing Achilles and knee problems. I think they've restricted his minutes to around about 60 or so in the Premier League this year. Not many. There's a big chunk of change being spent on him. Unfortunately, he hasn't delivered. Still don't expect a start. But like I say, no returners either. So none in and none out.
We've got some conspiracy theories here with your shoes now, Ben. Chill Gamer has said we haven't seen them because they are actually Crocs, and Ben won't admit it.
I tell you what, I mean, yeah, I would absolutely never, I would never admit live on air that I owned or even have tried or even considered wearing a pair of Crocs. That would just do nothing for my street cred, by the way. If we forget I'm from Newcastle, born and bred, working class, you get your feet chopped off for less than that up here.
Marius has a very interesting point. He said they're late because the delivery driver has tested them out himself.
Well, I mean, you got more chance of the delivery driver's van being up on bricks, and that's why he's late around here. So I'm not saying it's rough, but
yeah, you're not saying it's rough, but we have got Southampton up next. As always, we say not too much interest in them, but what is the latest there?
Yeah, Maitland-Niles, of course, he's ineligible against his parent club, so that brings Roman Peru back in on the left with Walker-Peters switching back over to the right-hand side. Big calls from the Southampton supporters to put in Unachu up front. Of course, Shea Adams is still sidling with a calf problem. Look, so I'm siding with those Southampton supporters. It really is last roll of the dice for Ruben Celes. We're not expecting anything from the Emirates tonight. They've never won there in the Premier League history. So I expect Arsenal, who I have backed in last man standing, to get an easy 3 points and carry me through to the next round.
Oh, Giandre, don't say that. He says Walcott will probably score against Arsenal. I'm more nervous than I should be for this game, with the way that we played the last few. And we don't seem to be able to keep a clean sheet at home as well. What was the stat that you threw at me recently about how many goals Arsenal have conceded? And it's quite a lot. It's a worry.
Yeah, hadn't he conceded the same amount of goals at home as Nottingham Forest?
Yes.
Was it 19?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, which was a little bit of a surprise.
Absolutely insane in terms of home defensive records. We've done well in terms of playing at home. We've won most of those games. We've looked good, but the defence has been suspect, and that is with and without Saliba in the side. So you can't say, it's suddenly a recent thing. It's been all through the season, and lots of Arsenal fans have noticed it themselves. Moving to the other side of North London, though, Tottenham. What is the latest there?
Yeah, so this was a late press conference, and I have made changes in terms of personnel, but also the way Christian Stellini could set up his team. He had sort of continued that Antonio Conte methodology of that 3-4-3, but I did revert back to a 4-2-3-1, and that was based on the fact that I expected Clement Lenglet to miss out, forced off with a muscle issue last weekend. Now, he has took part in partial training, and Christian Stellini does expect him to take part in a full session on Saturday. So again, if he comes through that without any kind of reaction, he could come back into that team, and this, side could go back to a 3-4-3. But I did like this setup, and I did like the fact that Dan Juma could come in, which would be, I think, his first Premier League start, and that was based on a couple of impressive performances from the bench. So, like I say, this is one where we could potentially see a change in terms of that setup, and it's based on the fact that Langley is, pushing for a surprise return.
Indeed. We shall see how it goes, though, because I think everybody in the comments, please do contradict me, though, if you disagree. Everybody's backing Newcastle for a win, but not just a win, a big win. West Ham up next. They upset Arsenal last weekend. They've disrupted their run to the title. But what is the latest team news there?
Obviously, the Hammers were involved in Conference League duty on Thursday night. David Moyes made 3 changes from last weekend. It looks as if everybody's come through that fixture pretty much okay, although those evaluations will continue for the rest of the day, and then we'll have a light session based on Saturday to determine, the possibility of that starting 11. So this is one that we may look to make tweaks in. On the left-hand side, Aaron Cresswell looks to have that left-back spot nailed back down. It was Emerson who started on Thursday night. Elsewhere within the team, will David Moyes go for the Mikel Antonio, or the Danny and Mick combo again? Like I say, I'm not too sure. There have always been concerns about Antonio starting games in quick succession, given his history. Played well on Thursday night, grabbed himself a couple of goals. The other talking points would be mainly around, those centre-back spots, but it looks as if Angelo Ogbonna could miss out again. He picked up a back injury in that first leg tie 8 days ago.
And then the final team for this week are Wolves, and still no shoes yet. Still fingers crossed that they'll appear. What is the latest for Wolves?
Yeah, again, coming off the back of a decent result against Brentford. The one question mark I had was maybe over the fitness of Diego Costa. He took a heavy knock to the knee during that first 45 minutes. Couldn't continue in the second half, but it looks as if he's trained normally and therefore should be fine. So we have him starting. Obviously, Ruben Neves comes back after his suspension, so we've got to throw him back in there. It is João Gomez who comes out, maybe a little bit unfortunate. And also Johnny is back from his ban, but I'm sticking with Totti on that left-hand side.
Now, I want to keep you on for a little bit longer, Ben, so that we potentially see the shoes, but also people were interested in your what should we say, differential Dinnery 11 for the game week. So do you want to talk us through your 888 article? You had Johnston, who I think everybody's got in their team, but I think one of the big things is you put in Virgil van Dijk in your defence instead of kind of going with the Liverpool Gakpo, Salah kind of trio there with Alexander-Arnold. Why did you go for Van Dijk?
Yeah, I mean, just as discussed in the article, looking at primarily his threat from the set piece. Of course, I think, is it Nottingham Forest have only scored 5 goals away all season, so we'll make the assumption that, double Liverpool at the back is going to be double clean sheet, barring some kind of massive mishap for the Reds in defence. So as well as, and because we cannot nail down one of those attackers apart from the Mo Salah, I just thought maybe that Trent and Virgil van Dijk are the 2 players who offer the most attacking threat of those defenders. There's nobody necessarily in elsewhere within that squad. I don't see Robbo contributing, and certainly not Konate. So Virgil van Dijk, duo one, and also, like I say, hopefully he might get up from maybe a corner or a free kick, get his noggin on it to bring home the bacon.
Oh, lovely. Great description as well. It's making me want some bacon. We've got Martin Odegaard in the midfield rather than Saka or who's the other? Leandro Trossard, but I think that's kind of self-explanatory just in terms of making sure that you've got a starting 11 out there. But you put in Eberechi Eze as well, who's been absolutely amazing at the moment. You're kind of still gambling on the brilliance of Roy Hodgson improving the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, an appealing fixture. And of course, you're talking about a player who is highly differential and costs peanuts. 28 points across, recent game weeks with 4 goal involvements. You've got to follow the form, and particularly when you've got your free hit, these gives you opportunities to pick up players that you wouldn't necessarily want in the long term. It's about the here and now. And of course, like I say, you want to pick those players who are red hot, and certainly he falls into that category.
And you've also put in there that Harry Wilson, now he's not obviously in your team, he's a substitute, but he looks quite good along with Pereira as well.
Yeah, I mean, Fulham have stuttered in recent weeks, but got back to winning ways last weekend. That was a great result at Goodison Park, and of course, he was on the score sheet. So, we spoke about the potential of who we maybe start in attack, but it's for those players who are sitting in behind, the Pereiras, the Willian, and the Wilsons, that will need to contribute as well. And like I say, I think Fulham have got a really good chance, and that's based on the opposition as well.
Now, I think your team has caused a lot of controversy here because Michael, is it Michael or Giandre has said Ødegaard and not Saka. Have you got something to share with us, Ben? But I think the thing is, first of all, your differential Dinnery for a reason. You try and pick. You go somewhat template with the likes of Trippier, but also you've got the Magpies love there. But also you've kind of chosen a few that maybe people aren't thinking of. But yeah, I guess you've already addressed it with the Saka situation. You think he probably will start rather than the rumours that he won't because Arteta wants to rest him.
Yeah, look, we've heard from Mikel Arteta many times before talking about players playing at the highest levels, and they need to learn to be able to physically cope with the demands and deliver optimal performances, maybe on the back of 2 and 3 game weeks. And he always used the example of the Lionel Messis and the Cristiano Ronaldos of this world. And if Bukayo Saka wants to be talked about, and those, are referenced in those types of conversations, then he needs to be playing 45, 50 plus games a season, and he needs to be performing optimally. I just think the return of Gabriel Jesus, that's coincided with a little bit of a downturn in the output from Bukayo Saka. We've seen Gabriel Martinelli, he's been thriving, getting those results as it last 5 or 6 game weeks he's returned. So, he's really come to the party during this season running, whereas as Saka, like I say, is probably dipped just a little bit. And for me, that penalty miss against West Ham was maybe just the straw that broke the camel's back, and why I've opted to go with the likes of Ødegaard and Martinelli over him.
And the final one, again, just kind of focusing on your differential choices. Alexander Isak, you put him in. Again, I think we talked a little bit about him already, but you fancy him against Spurs, don't you?
I wouldn't necessarily. It's a must-win game. I definitely think it's a must-not lose. They're in and around. Thanks to a few dubious refereeing decisions and the controversies of VAR, Tottenham are still within touching distance of that Champions League qualifying spot, unfortunately. So, we need to really put on a show in front of our home supporters. First and foremost, just to prove that we can bounce back from that defeat at Villa Park. And yeah, secondly, lay down a marker and really, hopefully kick Tottenham out of that, that race for one of those places in the Champions League. And what better way to do it would be on Sunday afternoon. So if we're going to do that, then it's going to be the likes of Alexander Isak who's going to have to deliver and, help us get those goals. And I think he's more than capable of doing so.
Chill Gamer has said, is Tony injured, guys? I think because you haven't got him in your team. But he's fine, isn't he? You've just not put him in.
Ivan Toney.
Yeah.
Did you say?
Yeah.
He's certainly not injured.
Yeah.
Why have I not got him in my team?
You just were looking at other differential
options. Yes. Yeah, you caught us off guard there. I wasn't sure if we're talking about the predicted 11.
Yes.
Or the 888. I was thinking, have I put another Mason Mount in at centre back?
Yes. John Dre has asked Gakpo or Jota.
Gakpo, again, just based on the fact that Diego Jota minutes will have to be managed given his injury problems. So whether he starts and he comes off, or whether Jurgen Klopp looks ahead of those, midweek fixtures and maybe prioritizes those. So I think Gakpo, just in terms of his fitness and his durability, over Jota, who, like I say, has had well documented injury problems this season.
Now I think this will have to be the last question because I don't think those shoes are coming yet, Ben.
I'm absolutely broken here. We're talking 319, and I'm sure my window went up to 322.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's got literally 2.5 minutes.
I'm quite
Otherwise,
sad
he's getting
here.
knocked out.
Yeah. Marius has asked, any news on Martinez and Varane? Now, we know that Martinez is not knocked out. He's ruled out for the season. So I guess Varane, what is the latest there?
Yeah, we're looking varying reports. The initial assessment would suggest that we're probably looking at maybe 2 to 3 weeks, although there is no definitive time scale on that. Other reports maybe suggest that he's in a race against time to play against again this season. I certainly don't think we're at that stage at this moment. So we're looking at May as that first sort of prognosis. We will hear from Eric Ten Hag ahead of that FA Cup tie against Brighton a little bit later today, around about 5:30 this evening. He may shed some light, but like I say, in terms of Varane, I wouldn't expect another appearance this month. So it's, when we can maybe see a return next month, maybe early to mid-May would be a good assumption at this point.
Now, Marius said, we've been lied to. He lied to us.
You know what? I am going to double check my phone here. Give me a look. What? Oh, actually, 3:38. My window's up to.
Oh, goodness me. Well,
so I've got 2 deliveries, and that was yeah. So I apologize for everybody who wanted to see those trainers. I mean, I could physically show you a picture on my phone, if you so wish.
Do a Twitter reveal, and we'll put it up on the YouTube channel as well. I think that's that'll be the. Imagine if that's like our record views as well. Just Ben Dinnery's shoe reveal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. What a sorry state of affairs, Jason.
Yes. Anyway, that is the end. We tried to stay out as long as possible just so that you could all see these shoes. Unfortunately, not. Next week.
Oh, hold on. Whoa. Hold on.
Oh.
Hold on. Just had the email. Congratulations, your trainers have been delivered.
Oh.
Are they
at the door?
They never knocked unless me big, fat, loud gob drowned out the knocker. They're with Katie at number 71.
Oh, no.
So the next door neighbour has them. And that was 2:45. So
this is absolutely amazing. So we will see the shoes, but not on the live stream.
Yeah.
Another time. Now, just to update us, Ben, what will be the schedule for next week? Because obviously there's the midweek shows. So will we do a live stream a little bit early in the week as well as the kind of usual later in the week too?
Yeah, we'll go double bubble. Why not? Deadline is, what will it be? 6 o'clock on Tuesday-ish. It will have to be fairly early on Tuesday because I am on childcare duty. So school's out around about 3. So I'd rather do it pre-kids as post-kids because it would be bedlam. So maybe we'll confirm. Maybe we're looking at somewhere around about maybe 12:30 start to 2 p.m. start, something like that.
Okay. So just everybody there, watch out for that, and then also we'll be back to kind of usual Friday as well. But for now, everybody, we're going to wish you the best of luck. Chill Gamer and Jondre are convinced that it's Crocs after all. They're very disappointed in you, and disappointed no shoes. But I hope the injury news wasn't disappointing and our analysis. Tune in next week for a double bubble. Subscribe to your channel so that you don't miss it. And as always, just to remind you, you can head over to the Premier Injuries channel as well if you need any news updates. But for now, we're going to wish you the best.